In my office, I have this list of the 5 wishes of people as they were dying, as they were old. And you know what 5 is? I wish I worked less. And these are even people who loved what they did.
That's what people do. They keep pushing off life. They keep grinding and working hard. And let me just invest now. And let me just push more. And let me just sacrifice more of my life now so I can achieve and reach things. So at some vague, unclear time in the future, I'll be able to enjoy the fruits of my labor. We always kick the can down the road and keep pushing ourselves.
It's a metaphor for life. Okay, I'm just going to get through this, then I'll enjoy myself, my day, my week, my month. Okay, I'm going to get through this stage of my life. I'm going to get through the next 10 years. That's not how you're supposed to do it.
It's part of the work culture we're in now, and it's really problematic. What you don't pay attention to when that focus is so singular is what you're actually sacrificing, is what the price is that you're paying for that dedication. So it's like, figure out what life means to you. What are the things that matter to you in the non-work part of your life? Figure that out and make sure that's happening first.
This conversation is needed, and this is why my show exists. Welcome back to the show, you guys. Today is going to be really special. And the reason it is in my heart, I've wanted to do a podcast, an episode about this topic. And here's what I'm going to call the topic, guys. Stress. How to deal with stress. How to deal with what I would call like work addiction almost. And it's prevalent in our culture, particularly in the Western world. And frankly, maybe I've even contributed to it a little bit. I certainly know I've lived it. And we're going to talk today about how this has sort of taken place and strategies just to live a better life in very stressful times with work, with someone who's immensely qualified. Here's how qualified he is. Number one, his books have been translated into like 30 different languages. His TED Talks have 35 million plus views, actually 40 million almost by the time we're doing it. He hosts the Dear Therapist podcast, but he's got a book that I just devoured, and it's right here, Mind Over Grind. And I like best the subtitle, How to Break Free When Work Hijacks Your Life. So how do we find that nuance in our lives? I don't know that I'd call it balance. He does. But we're going to have a beautiful conversation. You're going to learn a lot about it. It'll be very thought-provoking with Guy Winch. Welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to be here.
He's a PhD guy, so he's smarter than me. I'll try to hang in there as we go through everything today. So, hey, brother, let's start out. I'm going to tell you, I just watched this new show. At the time of recording it, it's out, just brand new right now. It's called Madison. It's got Kurt Russell in it. And it's a Taylor Sheridan show. I think it's Taylor's best work. And I told Taylor that it was. So there's this scene to start the show. It sets the stage for this podcast. So Kurt Russell's sitting on a porch in a rocking chair with his brother, and he's an achiever from New York, where you're recording right now. And he's out, and it's like Idaho or Montana, and he's fly fishing with his brother, but they're on this porch, and he's reflecting on life. And I'll paraphrase, but he basically tells his brother about this exotic vacation he was just on, and he said, I'm 65, and the character was, and we were the youngest people there by 10 or 20 years. And he said, I looked out on the beach, and there's these people that have waited their whole lives, worked their whole lives for this time, this moment in their life, where finally they're going to enjoy their life. And they arrive there physically incapable of doing so. Essentially, the stress in their life, all the work, all the years mounted, they finally get on that proverbial beach of life, and they can't even enjoy it physically. They can barely walk. They can't ride a Sea-Doo. They can't get in the water and swim. And I thought, my gosh, is that what we're doing in the world today? So why don't you start out, where did this develop? And like, why is it getting worse in your mind, this stress addiction to work?
First of all, that's a great scene, because I really think that happens. That's what people do. They keep pushing off life. They keep grinding and working hard. And let me just invest now. And let me just push more. And let me just sacrifice more of my life now so I can achieve and reach things. So at some vague, unclear time in the future, I'll be able to enjoy the fruits of my labor currently. There's this mindset that we have. We also have it when it comes to overworking. I'll just do it now, like I talk to a lot of founders, just until we get that first round of funding. And I'm like, yeah, what about the second round? The third round. We always kick the can down the road and keep
Yes.
pushing ourselves. It's part of the work culture we're in now, and it's really problematic because what happens when you do that, when you're so singularly focused on your work and again, you might really love what you do, you might be enjoying it theoretically. What you don't pay attention to when that focus is so singular is what you're actually sacrificing, is what the price is that you're paying for that dedication.
Mhm.
And you tend to find out only when it hits you sideways on the head and really kind of, you know, rocks your world. Or when you're 85 and you're on the beach finally and you're too, non-ambulatory to enjoy it.
It's so true. I'm a product of that. I mean, most of my fans and friends that watch the show know, like I had to take a long break physically. I had some health stuff that came up. I haven't really posted on it, social media and my main feed in a couple years because of some physical stuff. And I have a hard time because I know, Guy, and I know you do too. I know there's seasons of life where you have to sacrifice things and trade certain things for results you want. And I'm actually okay with that. If someone says, look, I know this next year is going to be a grind, in my own opinion, what I find is what you said, and in my own life, I never defined the finish line. I never defined when the can stops getting kicked. It's not after the first round of funding. That's usually a lie. It's not when you get to six figures for most people. It's not when they get to seven figures. It's and so is part of it. You said we could kind of go stuff that's not in the book. Do you think part of the advice should be like clearly define what your end zone is, at least so that when you get there, you do make some type of an adjustment? And I know we should be adjusting as we go, which is what the work's about. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But what about like just determining where the end zone is, at least for you, and adhering to it? Do you think I never did. I mean, I used to think, well, once my house is paid off or once this, but I never got really clear where I was going to give myself, makes me emotional, like permission to live.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think part of it should be having some definition of that before we get into the
Yes,
day-to-day tactics?
but I don't want to call it the end zone because that's the thing that makes people go like, but they're not at the end yet. And let's not call it the end zone. Let's call it the
Okay.
10-yard line if we're going to go with that metaphor. In other words,
Okay.
like first down. Can we do that?
There we go. Okay.
I mean, that would be more reasonable. And what I would like people to actually define is when I talk about work life, what does the life part mean to them? People always say to me, like, yeah, I added an hour of yoga. And I'm like, well, bravo, but that's not life. That's an hour you added. What's life mean to you? Because to me, life should mean the work-life balance is that when you come home and you're, doing the kids' homework with them or putting them to bed or hanging out and having a date night with your partner, that you're actually present enough to be able to enjoy it, that you're actually non-stressed enough that that feels like an important thing to do because time passes so quickly. It's the mundane stuff that we're missing out on because we're so checked out, we're obsessed with work, we're ruminating, we're preoccupied. So for me, living life is first be present in the regular stuff. You come home in the evening, a lot of people come home in the evening, people say who don't have families, they're so exhausted that they just veg out for 3 or 4 hours because they, believe, oh, I'm too tired. But that's mental fatigue. It's not physical fatigue. They're not physically tired. They sat at a desk all day or something. So
Mhm.
it's like figure out what life means to you. What are the things that matter to you in the non-work part of your life? Figure that out and make sure that's happening first. It's so basic, but let's start with basic.
By the way, very good. And you're right about the end zone. I appreciate that correction. You're completely right about that because the book spoke to me. So I think to some extent I was reading about my life and what he just said about being present. I have to tell you guys also that chapter 3 hit me. Um, the blitz about these intrusive thoughts. And,
Mhm.
I'll be candid with my friends that have listened to me for a long time. Oftentimes my wife will say, remember when Bella did this when she was 3 or 2, or Max did that? And a lot of the time, the honest answer, even though I was there, is no, I don't remember. So my body was there, but I was so fatigued mentally and emotionally, or so distracted that although my body was there, I don't have any recollection of those events, many of them in my life. And so the good thing about the book that I love is you define the problem very well, but you also give solutions. And so chapter 3 is the blitz, and it talks about these intrusive thoughts. Can you discuss that process and give us some key to being able to turn it off when we are at home, these intrusive thoughts?
Yeah, when we have a very stressful day, a difficult day, we had a very difficult client, something didn't go well. There was a confrontation with a coworker, our boss kind of like shot us down in a meeting and embarrassed us. There was some kind of political situation at work that we know really upset us, or some kind of incivility of somebody just being rude to us. What's likely to happen is that you're like busy all day, you're gonna get home and start to process that and when you're home and or when you're finished working from home.
Yeah.
And the problem is that if you don't pay attention, the way you're going to process it most likely is really in a very ineffective and unhealthy way in the form of rumination. Rumination means to chew over. It's just like replaying the upsetting thing, just churning, being on this emotional hamster wheel that doesn't actually get you anywhere. For example, one of the ways people do that, something upsetting happens, they come home and rehearse in their head, and it could be for hours, by the way, for hours, this fantasy argument with the person that they will never have.
True.
How are we going to tell off their boss? And I'm going to tell them this, and I wish I could say that. And they like spend hours. Now, that A is completely unproductive. What are you figuring out? Nothing. Here's what you are doing. You're flooding your system with cortisol. You're stressing yourself out. You are also activating all the upsetting feelings you had when this thing happened. If you felt embarrassed or you felt angry or you felt resentful, you felt frustrated, by reliving it and rechurning it, you're reactivating all those feelings. So you're actually taking the upsetting thing that happened over 5 minutes at work and then supersizing it for 3 hours, in the evening. Well, by the way, of course, you're going to be checked out no matter what's going on around you. You'll be there in body, but not in mind, not in
Yeah.
actual presence. And so people don't distinguish when they're actually self-reflecting in these ways, in ways that are harmful to them or ways that are productive to them. Let me define productive. Productive ways of, now look, it's important to process the things that are upsetting us. I'm not saying we shouldn't, but to do it productively is to have a point, to be able to have a takeaway, to be able to learn a lesson from it, to be able to have an action plan from it. To do so, here's the exercise people need to do. When you catch yourself ruminating and upsetting yourself by replaying the same events over and over again, or thinking of all the other times your boss did the thing that upset you, and now it's 2 hours of the greatest hits that are upsetting. When you catch yourself doing that, pause, label it as rumination, and ask yourself this. Say to yourself, what is the problem I need to figure out here? And there can be many different, right? It can be like, do I need to have a conversation with my boss? Do I need to figure out why my boss jumped down my throat in the meeting? What did I do that might have triggered them that I can avoid doing in the future? Do I need to have this conversation with this coworker who I kind of think is a little bit scheming against me? Do I need to avoid the person? Like, whatever the question is, turn it into a question that needs to be answered and resolved, because then you're actually figuring something out. Then you're actually trying to come away with an action plan. Then it's about, all right, if I need to talk to this coworker, then you work backwards. What's my goal of that conversation? It's not just a vent. Again, don't do something that's not thought through. Thought through means, what's the outcome I'm seeking? Then once you know that, work backwards. What's the best way to achieve that specific outcome? That kind of thought process is structured. It's organized around posing question, finding answers to the question, coming up. That will allow your brain to let go of the upsetting thing because you've figured it out. When you're just spinning and churning, your brain will hold on to it and that's the blitz of the reminders that'll keep coming into you, because it's not figured out. It's still an active, open issue.
Wow. It's like an open tab on a computer.
Yeah. Yeah,
By the way,
exactly right.
thank you. that was great for me. When I started this podcast, I acted like I had it all figured out, and I didn't know anything. It was really overwhelming, and every day seemed to introduce a new decision that needed an answer, and I didn't have any of them. Luckily, I found somewhere that did, and it was Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world. 10% of all e-commerce online in the U.S., from household names like this show right here, the Ed Mylett Show, to brands getting started, are all Shopify. Get started with your own design studio with hundreds of ready-to-use templates. Shopify will build you a beautiful online store that matches your brand style. It'll accelerate your efficiency. Whether you're uploading new stuff or trying to improve existing ones, Shopify is packed with helpful AI tools. They can write product descriptions, page headlines, and even enhance your product photography. So start your business today with the industry's best partner, Shopify, and start hearing... Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/Mylett. Go to shopify.com/Mylett. That's shopify.com/Mylett. Hey guys, if you're like me, you're probably tracking a lot of stuff in your health, whether that's your heart rate or your macros or amount of water you're drinking every single day. And if you're doing that, that's great. But what about your gut health? More and more people have come on this show and said they believe there's a gut energy relationship, that there's a gut brain connection that's significant for cognition. That's why I love Tiny Health, because they're an at-home gut health test. And you need it. Get your microbiome looked at. They can track your good and your bad bacteria and know what's going on from that perspective. I've had so many people tell me that once they had this test done, they realized there needed to be adjustment in their gut. And all of a sudden, their energy's taken off. By the way, their cognition, their focus, everything is changing. So Tiny Health is a place to get that test done. It's easy, it's cost efficient, and it's something I highly recommend you do. Tiny Health is offering my listeners their most aggressive offer ever. $50 off your first at-home test kit. So go to tinyhealth.com/Mylett. That's tinyhealth.com/Mylett for $50 off. tinyhealth.com/Mylett. You guys, in my office, I have it, it's hidden a little bit here, but in my office, I have this list of the 5 wishes of people as they were dying, as they were old, as they reflect back on their life. And the first one is they wish they would have stayed in contact with their friends more. The second one is they wish in their life they would have expressed how they truly felt. These are the thoughts and wishes of dying people at the end of their life. Third, they wish they would have lived their life on their own terms. 4, let myself be happy. I wish I would have let myself be happy. Isn't that interesting? Just let yourself be happy. And you know what 5 is? I wish I worked less. And these are even people who loved what they did. That is not an excuse for a massive addiction to something. It's finally what I discovered, because I love this. I love speaking. I love building companies. And I used to think that was justification for this addiction. But even though it might have even been a healthy addiction to some extent, it still was costing me things over the years, physically, emotionally, mentally, in my relationships with people. And so how do you distinguish between, because these ruminating thoughts, you have it in the book, so I know the answer, but how do you distinguish between something like this argument with your boss or a thing at work that's a threat, as opposed to something that's a challenge? This is right out of the book, you guys. This is awesome stuff right here.
So it's really interesting, because when we have a goal before us, if we think how we think of that challenge, how we think of that situation, the mindset we have as we approach it makes a critical difference to how we will perform in that situation. When we have to go and have a confrontation with our boss, say, in some way, whether we perceive that as a threat, like something like, "Ish, I hope this is going to go well, I'm not sure," that feels like a threat, versus whether we see that as a challenge. You know what, I've rehearsed for this, I've prepared for this, I've thought this through, I know my boss, I know exactly the kind of thing I need to say to make my point, I've got this. Different mindsets for the same conversation you're about to have. In the challenge mindset, you are relying on your resources, you are relying on your preparation, you feel good about it, you are heading in there to win something, you are heading in there to crush something. That mindset is extremely positive. It will allow you to avail yourself of your resources to do your best. That's the opposite mindset, the one about, I hope this goes well, but I'm not sure, the hesitancy, the doubt. It makes a difference in just remarkable ways in our brain chemistry, in literally physiologically how our body responds. And you will go in and you will not do well because that hesitancy, that doubt, that questioning, that not being sure, the going in to not lose as opposed to going in to win is the same thing, kind of semantically, but it's vastly different. And so anytime we have a challenge in the workplace or in life, in sports, because this is a sports psychology theory essentially, then we really need to attend to our mindset. We need to prepare. We need to feel in control. We need to feel that we have the resources. We need to feel that we can actually win, as opposed to hope we can, but worry that at least let's not lose. That nuance of mindset makes a critical difference. And in the workplace, especially when you're doing things that are anxiety provoking, like giving presentations or having a difficult conversation or doing things that have high stakes, that mindset is really critical.
When Max sent you to me, brother, my son, who's the producer, said, "Hey, Dad, I think this is something we should talk about." Be honest with you, part of me was conflicted. And let me tell you why. I know a lot of the people that follow me on this show want to do something great in their life, right? They want to be great. They want to be the GOAT at what they do. And I know that requires an unusual level of commitment and dedication and, frankly, focus. And I used to think anything that violates what I just said there is like the other side of personal development. Drink your wheat grass, put your fingers together, meditate 19 hours a day. There's like these two camps, right? And over the years, I've come to believe that some of the things you teach in this book, I could have been better at work. I could have been more productive. I could have been more creative. I could have been on the right side of my brain more often with more energy to my work had I actually, in other words, it's not a choice of A or B. There is some self-care in our lives that you talk about in this book that'll actually make you a better machine that you think
Right.
you want to be. One of the things you talk about, man, I wish I would have read this book 30 years ago, right? By the way, everyone, I think I'd have been wealthier. I think I'd have been more successful. I know I'd be healthier and I know I'd have deeper relationships. I don't think these things would have cost me success. I think they would have been additive. Is micro breaks. And you talk about it in the book. You got to tell them, I know they got to get the book. There's so much in the book, you guys. Trust me, you're going to get the book no matter what we cover today. But can you talk about micro breaks for a second? This is a strategy and an idea I've not heard anybody talk about any of the books I've read.
So yeah, I just want to preface something and just I highlight what you said there about my approach because I think it's really important. I first of all I talk about myself in the book. I
Yep.
pretty much made every mistake I talk about in the book,
Right.
because I am an ambitious person and I tend to overwork and I tend to say yes to a lot of things and I tend
And
to
you're
get
intense.
excited.
You're intense.
Yeah, and I so I'm subject to all the all those slippery slopes that I talk about, and my goal is like, yes, you can strive, you can want to succeed, and you can succeed, and you can achieve, and you can do it in a smart enough way that you're actually doing better there and still living your life well outside of work. So it's really about having both. It's not about one over the other. It's not about don't work so hard, have a better life. It's about do better in both. And they're highly related. And micro breaks is a great example. When we have very demanding days, there are many days that I used to have, and I'm sure this is true of you and of many, many people, where you wake up in the morning, you know what's ahead of you for the day, for the week, and you go, gotta get through this week. This day I just got to get through it because it's that much, and when we have that mindset, unfortunately what we tend to do is we put our head down and we go from task to task to task to task, from thing to thing to thing to thing. We do it kind of mindlessly. We do it on autopilot, and when that happens, there are all kinds of problems with it. Number one, we will start to fade just
Yes.
in terms of our mental abilities, our creativity, our decision making, our thinking, our attention to detail, all our executive functioning will start to decline seriously throughout the day because we're just grinding. We're just like going from one thing to the other. We can't sustain that for many hours without it compromising those abilities significantly. And it's kind of like misery, or just like kind of let me just tolerate this. Let me just get through it. Now, what we should be doing instead, and it's a very simple thing. When we have demanding days, when we have demanding weeks, is to take, and it truly takes 5-10 minutes, 5-10 minutes before the start of the day, before the start of the week, and be much more intentional about, let me look at this day. Where do I take my breaks? What kind of breaks can I take that will actually refresh me, recharge me, reinvigorate me throughout the day? And in the book, I talk about the research that looks at micro breaks, from 2 minutes to 5 minutes to 15-minute power naps to all kinds of things that we can do. Because if you're not actually being thoughtful about it, you will do what most of us do. You'll get on your phone, you'll, look at social media, you'll do the kind of, which is fine, except it's not refreshing. It's not going to do anything for you. You'll game, you'll do stuff that will just not do anything to actually recharge you and actually refresh you. And you can actually choose to do and curate and be intentional about, oh, this is a 3-hour obnoxious meeting. I'm going to actually schedule a call with somebody I really care about so I can vent about it later, or just get a feeling of loving this or loving that. Or, Wednesday is the hump day and it's such a long day. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 15 minutes there, and I'm going to, prepare my favorite lunch. And I'm going to look forward to that lunch. I don't do it a lot, but you know what? Wednesday's a day where I deserve that lunch. Let me squeeze 20 minutes here to go outside and sit in nature, to just relax, because that will recharge me. I have 2 minutes between these difficult meetings. You know what I should do? I've been sitting all day, up and down some stairs, some push-ups, something physical to get my blood pumping. You need to be thoughtful. And if you do that, you will accomplish more during a day. Your work product will be better. All your skill sets will be sharpened. And so it's actually advantages you. It just requires you to disconnect the autopilot and be more intentional and deliberate about, take charge of your day, be the manager for yourself, and do that.
That's extraordinary what he just said, you guys. And I know my team's in the studio right now kind of smirking, because I'm in the middle right now as we're doing this of one of those days. And you know what I just did, thanks to you? Half hour before this, I took a micro break.
Nice.
I had this bowl of soup that I love, just a kind of like a comforting bowl of soup, right? And then you know what I did? I closed my eyes for about 10 minutes. I actually was a little bit judicious in scheduling. I asked my team, can you please give me a half hour somewhere in there, in the middle? I'll do the 8 meetings. All right, I got it. It's that day, right? I got the 4 podcasts or whatever it is, but just schedule some micro breaks in there for me. And I'm bringing, my A energy to this. And by the way, enjoying it. It's not just like, because it's a metaphor for life, isn't it, guy? Like, okay, I'm just going to get through this, then I'll enjoy myself, my day, my week, my month. Okay, I'm going to get through this stage of my life. I'm going to get through the next 10 years. That's not how you're supposed to do it. And I did it that way, right? And so much so, this is why the book's so good. I keep selling the book. I don't think I ever learned how to even take a vacation. And I'd like you to talk about it because it's in the book, right? And so I don't think I took one. I mean, I did physically take my body to Cabo for 2 or 3 days. And probably the first day I had too much tequila or something, right? But beyond that, I was still ruminating. I was still in email. I was still thinking. And then the day before I'm going back, I got to get ready mentally. So I'm back in that mode. And then I look at it, I'm like, I flew all the way to this place, right? I did all this stuff, maybe for 3 hours and even then, I'm pretty sure my mind was still cranking away. Can you help us learn to unplug in vacation, or the metaphorically even?
But look, I just want to mention something that's actually not in the book about me. And I was just like you. I said, Ed, I just made so many of these mistakes. But one of them for me was, I wouldn't pause to celebrate anything, because I'm setting the next goal. Why am I pausing here? I got my undergraduate degree, didn't go to the graduation. Didn't celebrate that at all. Master's degree, didn't go to the graduation, didn't celebrate it at all. It's when I got my PhD, which is the last degree you can get. And I was about to skip the ceremony when my brother was like, you're out of degrees. Maybe go to one. Maybe celebrate one, for goodness sakes, this is the last one, So, I mean, I totally get that. Wow. Vacations are tricky, because what we do with vacations is we work really, really hard to get ahead beforehand. so we can clear our desk, whatever. Then we get, and this was me up until recently, get to the vacation. I'm so hyped up. I'm so in work mode. It's 3 days for me to unwind enough to be able to actually relax. Then I only have 3 days left, if that. And it was terrible. I was wasting all these vacations, like, because when you're that wound up, like, you can't stroll through a new city. You're so goal oriented. You're like, let's get to the place. I need to see the place, and it's like, that's not the best mindset for a vacation. So I learned that you actually have to relax before you go on a vacation. You have to start down throttling before you leave. The few days before I leave on vacation, I try and clear the evenings to have a relaxed evening. I pack ahead of time. I don't try and get ahead at work. I don't try to work till the last minute. I try and literally go from fifth gear to fourth gear to third gear on that last day at work. I'm kind of just really coasting a little bit, and it's amazing when I do that. I hit the ground on the vacation in vacation ready mindset. And the first time that happened to me, I was like, oh my God, I'm relaxed and I just arrived. That's amazing. I'm going to get so much more value out of this vacation, and
Bro.
and then it turns out there's a whole science behind, so I end the book with a chapter about the science of vacations, because there's a lot of different things you can do to maximize the value of vacations you do take. But that was the major thing. Like, don't get there with your tongue hanging out.
So if you're listening to the show, we're all trying to get healthier, right? I mean, we're drinking the water that we're supposed to drink, we're getting our steps in, we're in the gym training, you're doing all that stuff. The missing link for a lot of people, their liver. A lot of health starts with the liver, and it's the one thing nobody's talking about right now that you should be focused on, and show your liver some love. And so that's where Dose comes in. Dose is a clinically backed liver supplement. And it actually tastes good. I mean, like, yummy. You're going to love it, right? But it's actually going to help you with your liver, and you will feel the difference. This isn't just some other cup of powder. Dose is a liquid supplement, like a daily 2-ounce shot that you would take. Tastes great, like I said, and you're going to feel the impact of it for sure. Head to dosedaily.co/Mylett or enter Mylett to get 35% off your first subscription. Your body does so much for you. It's time you do something for your body. So go to dosedaily.co, dosedaily.co/Mylett for 35% off your first month subscription.
So many of you have asked how to see me speak live, and for the first time ever, you can come see me speak live in person. All of my speeches have been private events, but now I'm teaming up with LifeSurge, speaking all over the country. LifeSurge is a one-day faith-based event where you'll walk in hungry for success, and you'll leave ready to build your resources to leave an impact on others. We're talking faith-fueled finance, growing your resources, crushing obstacles, and then, using it all for something way bigger than yourself. I'm joining LifeSurge in a few cities this year, and I'd love to see you there. I'll be sharing the stage with legends such as two-time football champion Tim Tebow, star of Duck Dynasty Willie Robertson, and leadership hero of mine John Maxwell, pastor and author Craig Groeschel, and worship with artists like Natalie Grant. Tickets are on sale at lifesurge.com. And just for my listeners, you can use the code ED30 for 30% off a ticket. There will be a link in the show notes, so click through and take some time to join us. Cities are being added all the time, so if you don't see one near you now, check back. I hope to see you there. So let me ask you this. So someone's listening to us, and I think maybe they're going, well, I'm not that extreme like these two weirdos are. I mean, I do celebrate once in a while, and I take a break or two here and there. And I think sometimes we go, I don't have a problem compared to them. So how does somebody know if they've got this issue that we're describing, that they're a little, addicted, overstressed, overworked? How do you know if you're suffering from an ailment that maybe you've been carrying with you forever, so it seems normal?
Look, especially when it comes to overworking. The thing about overworking is that it's a vague definition. I mean, the research definition is over 55 to 60 hours a week. But when I say that to most people, they're like, I do 55 hours last Tuesday, like, what are you talking about? So it's like, it seems like, that's nothing. I mean, I'm a founder. Of course I work like that. But it's not about how many hours you're putting in. It's about how much you are neglecting your life outside of work. One of the questions, I have clients that mostly, founders, those kinds of things, and CEOs. One of the questions I have to ask all of them, unfortunately, and I was always a little embarrassed to ask this, but now I feel like I need to,
Yeah.
is because these are very senior, established people. Is like, when was the last time you saw a doctor? When was the last time, Madam CEO, you saw a gynecologist? And I have to ask it because, like, 6, 7 times out of 10, what I get back is some kind of blinking, um, because yeah, I put off the annual physical because it's half a day. Who has the time for that? That kind of thing. It's very, very common that if you have a difficult day at work, you're going to come home and there's going to be conflict at home
Mm,
because it's going to be very difficult to undo the tension with a snap
mm,
of the fingers when you walk through the door or when you
mm,
finish, when you close your laptop at home.
mm,
It's like we don't go from, being completely charged up and on alert to completely calm. The modern day workplace, for many people, it doesn't have to be extreme, is the modern day battlefield. There are tensions, there are conflicts, there's all these competitiveness, especially if you care about what you do, then you're involved, you're engaged, it matters, the stakes are high, and your body responds by putting you in fight or flight. Your body responds by activating you and keeping you activated throughout the day. And then when you get home, it's just difficult to unwind on a dime. It takes us a while. And until we do, if we do, because many of us actually never do when we get home, we're still all wired up. But
mm.
even if we do, meanwhile, our partners, our kids, our families, our friends are picking up on that tension. There's studies that show that if you are really stressed out, somebody is really stressed out, and at work, their partner will lose he or her sex drive. In other words, that's
Wow.
how much this crosses over. We think we kind of keep it to ourselves, but these things have an impact because, again, we are not able to just kind of, flip a switch and turn ourselves off and be present. Like we have to be much more thoughtful, and there's certain techniques we need to use to do it. So when people say, "Oh no, this doesn't apply to me," I'm like, ask your family if it
Yeah.
doesn't apply to you.
By the way, what a great, I'm not any longer, but I would have been afraid almost to ask that question because I know the answer. Even just you posing the idea of asking that question, you know what they're going to say. So I want to ask you about self-care, which I'm proud of myself for even bringing myself as a man to saying those words now. I'll explain to you why.
Hmm.
I had an epiphany about 10 years ago. I was golfing with a friend of mine. And since you do this for a living, I'll be in therapy here with you for a minute. So golfing with a friend of mine. I'm going to tell everybody even who it was because he's passed away and he was a wonderful man. His name was Lou Welsh. Lou was a wonderful man. He founded LA Fitness gyms.
Oh, wow.
Very successful man. But I loved Lou because when I would look at him, I admired how kindly he treated people, how at ease he seemed with himself. What a wonderful family life that at least I observed that I thought he had. We were golfing one day, which I thought I was relaxing, right? Because I was golfing. And we played about 9 holes. And he goes, Ed, what are you doing? I go, I'm golfing with my buddies, including you, Lou. He goes, no, you're not. You are not. You're on your phone in between every shot. You're looking at your phone in between every shot. You're retrieving
Um,
emails. You haven't smiled once. He goes, Ed, this is no way to live. Because at least when you're relaxing, relax. And I said, Lou, I don't know if I know how to do that. And he said, oh, that's bullshit. Of course you do. And he said, Ed, you don't care for yourself. And I went, what do you mean? And he goes, I think you treat yourself like you're your own personal slave. You've been living with you for 40 years. Look how poorly you treat yourself. Would you do that to anybody else the way you treat you? The stress you put you under, the pressure you're under, the work, the rumination in your mind. We're standing there, this kind man. He goes, you treat yourself like shh. He said, shit. And he goes, my only conclusion is you want to die young and you don't like yourself. And it
wow.
woke me up. And he goes, would you just start to care for Ed for all of us, please? And so I say that for all of you that I know are like me. What are some forms of self-care strategically that you would recommend somebody try to begin to implement who doesn't know anything about this?
First of all, let me just say about your friend. That's a friend, right?
Mm.
That is a friend. To like tell you bluntly, dude, wake up.
Yes,
That's I define that as a true friend.
I
Anyway,
agree.
I wanted to just comment on what you said earlier. Self-care for men. Well, I also used to cringe at the term because I used to think, does that mean like a manicure and people putting cucumbers on my eyes or something? I don't want that to happen. And that's that's not what self-care means. Here's how I define it. To me, self-care means to give oxygen to those aspects of my personality and my identity that do not get stage time during the workday. To do those activities that really access different parts of my brain because I just don't access them during the weekday, during the workday, to be in touch with friends who, for me, for example, I can be super goofy with and super silly with or super irreverent with because I can't do that much during the workday, to play literally to find ways of joy and there are certain things. I mean, I like to think of myself as a mature person but with a wicked childish streak. I have it. What are you going to say? So I can I can be pretty base, at certain times, and I enjoy it, and that's fun. And I never used to get to express that. And then I think I talk about this in the book, but after 9/11, being a therapist here in psychologist here in New York, after 9/11, that was heavy for a while. And I realized, wow, I need to do something drastic to add to lighten my day. And I started doing stand-up comedy after hours, after I finished work. And I did it for like 3 or 4 years, quite seriously. And I never spoke about being a psychologist on stage. I had a completely different persona. I mean, it was still me, but a different life, because I didn't have a career. And it gave me the freedom to say the rudest things, the bluest things, like, as I used to say, like, yeah, finish, close up my office and go and tell dick jokes to strangers and, to drunk strangers in a basement bar. That's what I was doing at the beginning. And it just was like, it felt so refreshing. It
Yeah.
just was a different me, that I didn't get, it was a part of me, but I never, and then when I stopped, but I brought a lot of that back into my work. I didn't think there was room for humor in my work. And then I was like, no, there has to be because that's too important for me. It's too much a part of me. And so to me, that's what self-care means. It means really nourishing those parts of yourself that don't get nourished during the workday.
Bro, you're extraordinary. No, I mean it. I got to tell you, the highest form of self-care that I give me is surrounding myself with my wackiest friends, which my personal friends that make me laugh so hard. It's the
Right.
most alive I am, other than when I'm with my family, is when I'm with these men and women, many of which have been on the show. And then I have to tell you something because I know they're freaking out in the studio. Last week, I told these guys, I said, you guys, I think I should try stand up. Of all the things you
Oh,
could have said,
nice.
bro, because I'm a public speaker, I speak on stages all over the world, and people do laugh at my stuff, but that's different
Oh,
than
yeah.
walking into
Oh, yeah.
an underground comedy club in New York and they just heckled the dude before you. And I think I know why. And I think for you, and I just wanted to say this. I think another way of another form of self-care is finding other forms of expression of your
Yeah.
being,
Yes.
whether that be the guitar or the piano or running
Yeah.
or yoga, and those are forms of expression. Competing in a sport, doing a triathlon,
Yep.
whatever it might be. Some of my happiest, most alive friends have found forms of expression
Yep. I
outside
agree.
of work. So good, guy. How do you know? Hard one. It's in the book, so I know your answer, but I want you to talk about it. How do you know when you've sort of OD'd and you need to leave something?
A job, you mean?
Yeah,
When we need to, like,
yeah,
look, first of all, what I suggest in the book is like, because part of what you might be doing is over grinding unnecessarily. First, try and, do the mind over grind thing. First, try and unwind that. And so that you're not too stressed out, you're not too burnt out. and then see what you're left with. Because, I start the book with my experience of being burnt out after 1 year in my career. 1 year. And I already felt like I've been doing it for 40, so I was burnt out and I thought I didn't like what I did anymore. But when I was recovered from the burnout, then I reconnected to my joy and my passion for what I do. So you're not that objective when you're really burnt out. You're not that objective when you're exhausted all the time. You're not that objective when you're in the wrong mental space and over grinding, overworking. First, give yourself some grace and some mercy, and then see how you feel about the place. First try and fix the headspace, and then see how you feel. But if you do feel that you need to leave, you need to do it really, really thoughtfully. And you should definitely not do it impulsively, especially in today's workplace. It's a harsh workplace. You need to consider where you are in your career. You need to consider what the options are. You need to consider what the quality of life trades are. I work with a lot of people in finance, and some of them will say to me, like, I just feel like I can be doing so much more, and I want to find a different job. And I say to them in some cases, like, dude, you're in finance. You're in finance. You make this many millions of dollars a year. And every time I talk to you, you're coming out of the pool at your club, or you're just finished a brunch. You have like the best hours. Like, there are not that many eyes on you. You're living your best life. You might trade up, but you might find that you are losing a lot in the trade and a lot of freedom. And, like, because of that, like, what is the quality of life that you have at work? That quality of life, which is about the hours and it's about the people. The people matter a ton. Those are the people that's your work tribe. You're going to spend the vast majority of your waking hours with them, more so than with your family. If you are among good people, be very thoughtful about whether you want to leave that, because you don't know the people you're going to end up with. Maybe they'll be good, maybe they won't. And that quality of life delta might not be worth whatever the delta in comp is for your title, whatever the thing is.
Interesting advice. What great advice. Makes me think, as you're talking, I'm reflecting on something I've taught. Maybe I should teach more, but you really do. You get the life you focus on. So if at work you're focusing on things you don't like, but there's these beautiful human beings there, if you started to focus a little bit more on that, maybe you have a different sense of it. I think my overriding challenge with the grind culture, so to speak, is that it causes focus to be so narrow on the climb. And I wonder what you think about this. And I've been saying it lately, and I'm not even sure I completely believe it, but I want your opinion about it. There's stages of life, right? Like for all of us, and there's a trade-off for climbing the ladder, proverbial ladder of life, to where if you grow up like I did, when I was really young on welfare, and then we were middle class, but I wanted to climb in my life to where my family was financially free. It was a priority to me. And I got there. And then that wasn't enough. And then I had to keep climbing. And no one said to me, Ed, at every rung, but at some point, there is a trade for that rung. You're trading something for that rung. And it's okay if at some point in your life you decide what you'd have to give up to grab that next rung is no longer worth grabbing it. And you haven't lost who you are in that process. I just think we've been perpetually conditioned to a never-ending climb to a place that is so undefined that it becomes almost habitual with no reasoning behind it. Do you agree with that?
Yes. And I think a lot of people, first of all, there's this comparison culture, right? Like,
Yeah.
I've worked with so many people over the years that, like, my first 10 million and I'll be good. And then they get their first 10 million and they're like, yeah, but the people I'm around now have 50.
Gosh.
So I need to, aim for that. It just doesn't end. You can always compare yourself, to more. The thing is, what we get addicted to is not just the climb, but the feeling of achievement and accomplishment. And that's real, because when you set a goal and it's a multi-year goal and it's a long-term goal and you reach it, it is very satisfying. Now, what the research tells us, though, is the primarily satisfying part is the journey. Actually reaching it tends to be short-lived and anticlimactic. In other words, when you do it and you've finally achieved it, and it's celebratory for a little time, and then there's this huge now what that
Mm,
kind of comes over you that makes you want to, like, well, now let me set another goal,
mm,
because otherwise, what am I doing now? Like, where, that whole purpose has gone from me. And the thing is, you don't have to set another goal that's the next rung on the ladder. You don't have to do that. You can find other things in your life that will give you purpose, and find other goals in your life. And it could be about family, and it could be about friends, and it could be about individual accomplishment. It could be about personal accomplishment in terms of sports. Maybe you want to set out to do a marathon and you want to improve your time on that, or maybe you want to, like, find purpose and meaning in other ways. That's the thing that people really crave, that, once they're used to doing that. But it doesn't have to be in the same lane. It doesn't have to be just more of this. You can
mm.
have a qualitative shift. And okay, now I will kind of hover where I am, because that's good, but let me set my sights now, on something else. And I work with a lot of people who are very, very successful at work, and then they retire. And if they don't have a plan, they get depressed. And if they're not depressed, when they then turn all those energies and all that drive into something, less intense but meaningful. And then they go after that, and then they have a great life.
You're so right. I have a really good friend, Scotty D. He owned a bunch of transmission shops, and he's one of my friends who gets it. He exited, and he could have then tripled down again on another one. And he goes, you know what, man, I'm going to move to Montana with my family. And then he got there, and I was worried about him. I'm like, well, what's his purpose? What's he going to do? This is a, he's one of these guys. He's a machine. He's a hunter. He's an achiever.
Right.
And it wasn't work. He poured himself into, he like became unbelievable at the guitar, and especially his faith life and his work in his church. And those things are a form of, I think it's just finding ways to still express yourself. I always say I'm addicted to the expansion of my being. And I feel like that's a healthy one, but I'm not addicted to only achieving it through my vocation.
Right.
I'm open to the ideas
Exactly.
of a different way. So I guess we're going to run out of time, and I don't know that I've done a podcast in a long time that's flown by this quickly, because I'm really enjoying you and the topic and the nuances of it. But I want to ask you, if someone came to you right now, and this is a hard question, no one ever asks these questions anymore, but I'm going to ask it. Mental health in general. Do you find in your work that there is a difference in the causality and the suffering of men and women? Is it different in our culture now? Meaning, do you see a certain propensity in men and a certain propensity in women that may be slightly different as it comes to this grind culture? Or are humans in general, and are these generalities dangerous to get into? Or do you actually truthfully see a difference between the two? And if so, what are they?
Look, my problem with generalities is that they're generalities, and so they only apply to a specific, like, rough mean in the middle, and they don't apply to almost as many people as they do apply to. That's
Okay.
my general problem with generalities. But just if people will forgive my generalizing about what I'm about to say,
Okay.
there are some differences between men and women. I am not in any way suggesting that one group has more challenges than the other. They have different
Right.
challenges, and
Right.
how
That's what I
challenging and
see.
how upsetting and how problematic those challenges are, is subjective. But men have specific challenges that women often don't, and women have specific challenges that men often don't. Women are disadvantaged in the workplace, for example. The studies that show that if a man does a certain amount of work and creates a certain work product in a certain amount of time, and a woman creates the exact same work product in less time than the man did, i.e., she's more efficient, she's more competent, she will be judged less favorably
Mm,
because the man put in the hours. She
mm,
was, she was kind of, and same work product.
mm,
So women face tons and tons of biases in the workplace. They have a lot of challenges in that way that are totally unfair. It's a bigger hill to climb, in so many ways. Men have their own set of challenges. For men, the burden of how they're socialized, and the idea that they have to own this idea of supporting, of creating, of being a man, means producing, means, like providing. It's a big burden. There's a whole, and don't complain, because that also goes with the thing. Just show up, do it, and shut up. Like, no one wants to hear if it's difficult. Just show up. And so men have a much harder time than being able to talk about the difficulties. And if you have trouble talking about the difficulties, you can't really deal well with the difficulties, and they have, mental health struggles because they're actually not paying attention, addressing, or feeling that it's legit to even talk about them or address them. So I'm just giving examples, but there are different challenges, that men and women face, but they are very challenging in each group, and beyond me to assess, like, which ultimately is worse, because I just think there's some real hardships on both sides.
And you know why I'm asking you. He's one of the podcasts that he hosts is a visibility gap, and it goes into a lot on men's mental health, and that's why I asked the question specifically. So everybody has context for why I ask this. And I do know I coach men and women about equally, and in fact, the audience of this show may actually now be 60-40 women.
Amazing.
It seems to be evolving, but I do see a burden in men in our culture that concerns me, which is their measurement in these last few decades of their manliness is of almost financial status or career status or job status, and the pressure on some of these guys concerns me, and I'm sure that affects women as well that have different pressures, but it concerns me. Okay, so last question. I want you to know I've enjoyed this tremendously, and I want everybody to go get Mind Over Grind, because we've covered 10%. We haven't even covered 10% of the book. Go get his book. Someone listened to the show today, and they said, man, I enjoyed you. I heard you on the Ed Mylett show. Great strategies. Thank you for speaking my life. I feel like they were looking in a mirror, a lot of people. Man, I wish Ed asked one more question, which could he get one more strategy or tactic or daily habit out of you that I could put into my practice of my life. I wish there was that one more question. So I'm asking it for them. They get the one more question. Something we didn't cover today that you would say, hey, this habit, this practice, this ritual, this behavior on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis, whatever it would be, would really serve you in eradicating some of this addiction to grind and stress, would be what?
Okay. I can say 10. Here's I'm going to say one, which is a general one. You need to create, and by you I mean listeners and me and everyone. You need to create a ritual to transition your mindset from work to personal life, to life after work, the evening, supposedly, whatever that is for you. Because again, you are on high alert, you're in fight or flight during the day, you're charged up, you're activated, you need to come down. And that's difficult for our brain. What our brain does do well is it learns well sequences of events, because then it anticipates what's coming next. So if you have a ritual that you do every day on your commute home, or when you get home, or before you leave the office, to help you transition your mindset from the mindset of the work battlefield to the home life, that will help your brain. That ritual should include repetitive steps and as many of the senses as possible. So create a playlist, or have specific songs that you listen to that help you calm down, or prepare you for, the family time, if that's it, or for friend time, if that's it, for romantic time, if that's it. Listen to music. Music is very, very evocative. Change clothes at the end of the workday. Our clothes are very embodied. There's a reason power suits are called power suits and leisure wear is called leisure wear, though the purpose of them is literally to make us feel powerful or relaxed, etc. And now some people say to me, I work from home, I'm in jeans and a t-shirt. I'm like, terrific. Have jeans and t-shirts that you wear when you're working, and very different jeans and t-shirts that you wear when you're not, and change clothes. Your brain will learn to associate those clothes I feel this way in, those clothes I feel that way in. So change clothes. If you work from home, a lot of people, when they're working from home, they have a workstation at home, and so they're seeing it all the time. And it's reminding them of work all the time. Shut the laptop off, cover it, put a plant on it. If there's a big computer screen, get some kind of fabric cover for it so it doesn't look like that. Put the paperwork in some kind of box somewhere, like make it look different. Shift the lighting. You know what I mean? Open a window, make it look like a different space. If you're working from home and you don't have the physical separation between work and home, create a separation, a psychological one, and you can, and it's very, very effective. But if you have a transition ritual that you enact every day, I do. I have, I don't know if people can see, people who can see the video. There's a door behind me. I'm in my home office. I close the door. At the end of the day, I tell myself, now the evening begins. That's how, and it's the same message. Now the evening begins. It's like a flag to, like, off we go to the races, except the races are, our life. And I literally am very intentional about shifting my mindset, taking a deep breath, really kind of like, and then I kind of define what my goal for the evening is. And again, it's life. It can be, and we're gonna watch that show. And see a few more episodes of the show, or I'm going to see this friend or have dinner here. I just remind myself that is a goal too, that too is something that I need to be focused on, the life part, whatever it is.
Brother, you're extraordinary. I mean this. Like, guys, just to deduce what he just said, it's interesting. We're really intentional about our work life. We're just like, oh, and then I'll just turn it on, and then my relaxed family life will just miraculously happen.
Right.
And especially for those of you that work at home, this distinction is difficult. So I just want to tell you, just to validate his work, because I knew it. I switch off out of my jeans or whatever I'm wearing, or my suit for the day, no matter where I am, and kind of sweatpants or my home gear, right? Like, that tells my brain we've shifted. And then my little daily ritual, just to give it to all of you, that also serves me, is when I have to switch into family mode, I just call my mom. It's a 5-minute conversation. I call my mom. I've been doing everything I'm doing today. Call my mom for 5 minutes. And all of a sudden, my mom doesn't care about work. Hi, honey. How are the kids? Are you taking care of yourself? How do you feel? And that moment, I just need 5. Plus, I've now called my mom. I'm now in family mode. It's almost like my trigger or anchor to tell my brain we've switched modes now. And that's thanks to you guys. So this was so good, brother. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
This conversation is needed. And this is why my show exists. Gosh darn it, that was good. All right, go get his book, you guys. That was Guy Winch. And by the way, he also has a podcast, Dear Therapist, that don't listen to before you listen to mine, but listen to it afterwards. All right, you guys. God bless you. Max out your life.